I still remember the day I said it, not because it was romantic, but because it was a joke that somehow ended up changing my entire life. It was a cold afternoon in Chicago, the kind that makes you pull your jacket closer and sip your coffee like it's your only source of warmth. Claire sat across from me, hair tucked into a messy bun, laughing at something I said about how unlucky she was in love. That's when I smiled and said those words, half teasing, half serious. "If nobody marries you, I will." She rolled her eyes and threw a sugar packet at me, and we both laughed it off like it meant nothing. But tonight, she texted me those 10 words that froze my heart and made my world spin. "Come pick me up. I wore the dress. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that finds you when you least expect it, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This story will remind you. Sometimes what we joke about becomes the truest part of our lives. Claire and I had been friends since college, two restless souls who met in a photography class. She was the kind of girl who laughed loudly, loved deeply, and carried a quiet sadness that few ever noticed. After graduation, life took us in different directions. I stayed in Chicago, working long hours as a mechanic trying to keep my father's old shop running, while Claire chased her dream in New York, working for a small fashion magazine. We stayed in touch through texts, occasional calls, and random late-night confessions when loneliness crept in. Over the years, I watched her fall in and out of love, break her heart, rebuild herself, and smile again, every single time. I never told her, but part of me always knew I cared more than I should have. It wasn't just friendship. It was something softer, deeper. Something that scared me because I didn't think I was good enough for someone like her. So I buried it beneath laughter, teasing, and late-night jokes about marrying her someday. Then 3 months ago, her world fell apart. She'd been engaged to a man named Robert, a wealthy real estate developer from Manhattan who looked perfect on paper. But behind closed doors, he was controlling, cold, and cruel. She never told me much, just bits and pieces. The way he'd criticize her for her clothes, silence her dreams, make her feel small. When she called me crying one night, saying she didn't know who she was anymore, I told her to come home. She laughed through the tears and said, "Home doesn't want me." I didn't push her, but I prayed, really prayed, that she'd find her way out. Tonight, that prayer was answered in the most unexpected way. It was just past 10 p.m. when her message came through. I was closing the garage, wiping grease off my hands, when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen, a name I hadn't seen in weeks. "Come pick me up." I wore the dress. For a second, I thought it was a mistake, a wrong number, some kind of cruel joke. But then another text followed. A picture. Claire, standing under a streetlight, wearing a white dress. The same one she once said she'd wear on her wedding day. Her eyes looked tired, swollen, but determined. Beneath the photo were 4 words that shattered me completely. I finally left him. I dropped everything and ran to my truck. The drive to New York felt endless. My heart pounded the whole way as snow began to fall, soft and relentless, blanketing the roads in silver. My mind replayed every memory. Her laugh, her tears, the nights we stayed up talking about dreams, the promises we never made but both silently kept. I didn't know what I would say when I saw her, but I knew I had to be there. When I finally reached the corner of 7th and Lexington, she was still there. Standing in the snow, suitcase by her side, that white dress clinging to her like a ghost of everything she'd survived. For a moment, she didn't notice me. She just stood there, looking up at the sky as if she was searching for a sign that she'd done the right thing. Then her eyes met mine, and the world went quiet. She smiled, a small, trembling smile that broke me. I ran to her, wrapped my coat around her shoulders, and she finally let go of the fear, the pain, the life that almost destroyed her. She cried into my chest, and I held her like I never wanted to let go that night. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. Some moments don't need words. Back at my apartment, I made her tea and gave her one of my old sweatshirts. She sat on the couch, still in that dress, tracing the rim of the mug with her fingers. The city lights flickered through the window, and the silence between us felt heavy but peaceful. I wanted to ask her why she left, how she found the courage, but instead, she whispered, "I remembered what you said once. "What did I say?" I asked softly. She smiled faintly. "You said you'd marry me if nobody else would." My heart stopped. I tried to laugh, to brush it off like before, but she looked at me, really looked at me, and there was no joke in her eyes. "I wore the dress," she said. "Not because I want a wedding, but because I wanted to feel free again. And when I did, the only person I wanted to see was you." That's when I realized, all these years, through every heartbreak and distance, she'd carried a piece of me just like I'd carried her. Over the next few weeks, she stayed with me. We talked about everything. The things we never said, the fears we'd hidden, the dreams we'd left behind. I watched her slowly come back to life, cooking breakfast in my kitchen, laughing at my awful jokes, filling the apartment with warmth I didn't know I was missing. One evening, while we were watching the sunset from my porch, she took my hand and said, "I don't know where this goes, but I want to start over. With you." For once, I didn't joke. I just smiled and whispered, "Then let's start." It wasn't easy. Healing never is. Some nights she woke up crying from nightmares of her past. Some days she doubted if she deserved happiness. But every time she fell, I was there. Not as her savior, but as her safe place. Slowly she began to see herself not as a broken woman, but as someone who had survived everything meant to destroy her. Months passed. The white dress stayed folded in my closet, not as a memory of pain, but as a reminder of courage. One summer evening while we were driving by Lake Michigan, she laughed and said, "You still owe me a wedding." I looked at her, the wind playing with her hair, and said, "Then I guess I better start planning." We didn't have a big ceremony, just a handful of close friends, a small chapel, and the sound of waves outside. She wore the same dress, but this time it wasn't heavy with sorrow. It shimmered with light, with peace, with everything she had fought for. When she walked toward me smiling through tears, I realized something profound. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive in grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it waits quietly through the years, until two hearts are finally brave enough to meet again. And as I said my vows, I remembered the first time I'd teased her. That silly, careless joke that turned into the truest promise of my life. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in love that heals, friendship that lasts, and second chances that save us, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Before you go, I have one special request. Comment below and tell me, do you believe that sometimes the right person was beside you all along, just waiting for the right moment? Because for me, that's exactly how I found Claire. Not in a fairy tale, not in perfection, but in the quiet truth of a single text, "Come pick me up." I wore the dress,